risky decisions, all these things, and that's just what's going to happen. I feel like I learned this actually in a sociology class in college, but either way, it's like I would rationalize that lack of connection, and because people need to rationalize whether or not it's right. We ourselves, like Death needs to in this movie, feel that we have some sense of control and order in the world and in our universe.
Hey.
And so I think that the detectives would just hand wave it away.
Shrek.
Right. Because he's busy being creeped out. He wants to deny that could possibly be true. I mean, he's told us that on screen.
Yep.
And so you brought up, like, what are the chances? How are these things linked? So Buddy from New Jersey asks, and this was the big one. What are the actual statistics of deaths by the same cause? And he's referring to the causes we witness of death in this movie. For example, shower slips, logging truck accidents. He's referring to part 2, hit by a bus, etc. Now, I don't know if you have any comments, but I actually went to the NSC, like some National Safety Commission government website, and found a lot of numbers.
Oh, I can't wait to hear these.
So I found a lot of numbers. Now, and okay, so before we get into this, just to understand, like if you Google plane crash, like what are the odds of dying in a plane crash? Plane crash. You're going to get
that'd be bad.
A crane clash. So you're going to get a lot of answers, and a lot of times they converge on one really common answer. So the most common answer I found was 1 in 11 million. Now this isn't the chance that you'll die when you get on a plane. This is saying that 1 in a million deaths is from a plane crash.
Oof.
Right? So regardless of whether or not you ever choose to get on a plane in your life, 1 in a million deaths happens to be from a plane crash. So hypothetically, it could be because a plane crashes and lands on you, or you're in a plane that crashed. And I don't know what they mean by plane crash. That's vague. I found numbers as low as 1 in 5 million and as high as 1 in 20 million for dying in a plane crash. But for the most part, I just picked the numbers that I found on the NSC because it had a whole lot of numbers for a whole lot of different things. So if we were to look at fatally slipping in a shower, which is a little vague, that is 1 in 812,000 for Todd's death.
I mean, that seems low to me, doesn't it?
1 in 812,000. Now, here's the thing. I don't know, again, how they put this together. Are they referring to any time that somebody slipped and any part of their body happened to be touching a shower? I don't know what this means, but it's basically 1 in a million. 1 in 812,000 deaths are from fatally slipping in a shower.
Yeah, I would have said 1 in 100,000.
Now, maybe if someone never takes a shower, they're free from that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what affects this, like our whole bath bathing world is affecting these numbers. I don't know. So here's so dying from a fall, 1 in 130. I think of every time that Billy got knocked off of his bike.
Wait, 1 in 130? Wait, 1 in 130?
1 in 130. 1 in 130 deaths is from a fall. Now, again, you got to extrapolate just how broadly they mean that.
Yeah.
I don't think they mean they got hit by a car and then you fell on the ground, though. But I mean, weird tripping incidents, I suppose. There were some really low numbers too. Like I didn't write it down, but the chance of dying from either heart disease or cancer was like 1 in 7.
Oofta. What about three-toed sloth attack?
It wasn't in there, but I imagine it's low. Most people keep their distance because they know how dangerous they are.
I'm hoping people learn this eventually.
So pedestrian incident, right? Very vague. 1 in 650. Unintentional drowning because the tree fell on Devonsawa. About 1 in 1,200. Now, I don't know if that would count as unintentional drowning or tree fall or a permutation of both. Exposure to fire is very vague, and an explosion was not on the list. So I'm assuming that explosions and exposure to fire are synonymous in this case. That's 1 in 1,500. Cyclist deaths, 1 in 5,000. Electrocution, 1 in 15,000. Contact with a sharp object, 1 in 38,000. So when we look at Mrs. Luton, Mrs. Luton's death scene.
The chair falls on her. Oh.
So in Mrs. Luton's death scene, she had, what was it? I actually jotted down some of this stuff as best I possibly could. But so her computer explodes from an electrocution event, and then she is stabbed in the neck. And then there's a gas explosion at her stove. She slips and falls on her own blood and is stabbed by the knife block that she has, that she left the rag on that she was pulling on. So she gets stabbed in the sternum. Then there's another explosion from the gas stove, which opens the gas stove's door, which hammers the knife deeper into her. And then, in case she still had a pulse, the house explodes. So, based on the statistics that I harvested from the NSC, if you were to just say that she died by contact with a sharp object, her death is 1 in 38,000. If you were to say that her death was from a sharp object compounded by the exposure to fire, or that is an explosion of some sort, and a fall because she had to slip for that knife to get her where it did, that becomes 1 in 7.4 billion. If we include the fact that there were multiple explosions, like, for example, the electrocution-based explosion, which is a much lower probability than what we already covered. So we have 2 explosions of 2 different kinds. Now it's 1 in 11 trillion.
Whoa.
If we take into account that she was stabbed more than once by 2 different things, we are now at 1.4 times 10 to the 17th power. If we include the fall and the tertiary stabbing when the door hammers the blade in, we reach 1 in 6 times 10 to the 20th power.
Jeez Louise.
And if we take into account everything, computer electrical explosion, stabbed in the neck, 2 explosions from the stove, a fall, a stab and a hammer stab, and then the house exploding, it is 1 in 4 trillion 10,000.
Oh, so it happens
a lot. That is 29 zeros.
Wow.
Of course, hers is the most elaborate death in the movie, right?
So Tony Todd...
Meanwhile, if we look at Billy getting his head lopped off by that train, that would either be 1 in 38,000 or a train incident, which is 1 in 431,000.
So it's head lopped off.
Now, if you were to combine them, though, you'd have 1 in 431,000 times 38,000, and now we basically have 1 in 10 trillion.
He had a quick one. There's 2 very quick deaths, and then there's 2 terrible ones. 3 quick deaths, and there's 280 quick deaths.
You know, it's funny. I commented that this movie doesn't rely on its special effects for its entertainment value, and I maintain that. But when he had and I love that it's the top half of his head, by the way, like his lower jaw would have been left on the body.
Yeah.
So when that lopped off, though, and you see that portion of his head plop down, it is the fakest looking upper head.
Yeah, they didn't put much of their budget into that. That's for sure. Yeah, that was... Can I ask you another question before... Are we done with questions?
That is all the listener questions.
Okay. Was he reading that Penthouse magazine just to read the articles? Because he was flipping through actually really into an article. And he's like, there's an owl. And then he threw the magazine at the owl, then he saw Todd. So he actually buys those for the articles.
I don't think he does. I think... Well, again, the commentary... suggested that originally he did a lot more with that magazine in the script.
Got it.
But the things that but even though you don't have to show that though, I think it's almost like he's kind of driving himself a little crazy. You know, he can't get the stuff out of his head. It's self-torture. And I think that because he kind of it was very abrupt. He just suddenly, put down what he was doing, reached for that drawer, pulled out a penthouse and just randomly opened it to a page. I think he was trying to distract himself.
Got it.
Which may or may not have ended with festivities.
Now, in the beginning, during the memorial service, when they showed the eagle, there's a woman in the background holding a boom mic, which makes no sense because are they interviewing students? Because you wouldn't really need that boom mic was overkill. Did you notice that, John? We can move on from that.
I didn't even notice that, but so of course there was local news coverage of an event like this. But do you think that was to depict the local news coverage, or do you think that was a filmmaking accident?
You just never see local news with a boom mic. They normally have to get better sound. They always just have like a mic that they hand them that captures better sound that they don't like, because you don't want the boom mic in the shot. So when you're shooting somebody, you got to get up close with that mic right above their head. So I would rather just give them a microphone. That's normally what the news does.
But it looked deliberate. Like, it looked like it was planned to be in the scene.
Yeah, I hate when movies try to show like people filming movies. It kills me. I can't stand it. I saw it and I went, I was like, I don't like that. So I just had to write that. That was it. But I had to complain.
So out of these death scenes, like, what in this movie, like, what really, other than the abruptness that we talked about, right, with Terry's death, of the elaborate death scenes, what really struck home or worked the best for you, or what was your favorite, like, insert reaction here?
Well, just the laughs. So the scene where the water's following him, it misses him once, and the water's like, ugh! And it like redirects to go to his feet.
And it makes a right turn.
Yeah. And then when she pours the cold vodka that was in the formerly hot cup and it cracks, it's just, and then it just, the vodka trail just follows her around. It's just so, it's just, I shouldn't be, you know me, I don't like mean. I don't like death for death. But these I felt were more funny. They were meant to be more of a roller coaster ride. And that's, for me, it's the laughs, the smiles.
Yeah, thrill of the chase instead of dread of the execution, right?
Hey, and I did something. And I want to kind of let you know what I did. So I went and I went to IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. I got their IMDb user score, Rotten Tomato critic score, Rotten Tomato user score, Metacritic score, Letterboxd score. And then I went and I found every single Final Destination ranking system I could use. And I gave a point system. So if it was number 1, it got 5 points. If it was number 5, it got 1 point. So I wanted to figure out which Final Destination movies were the most popular. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I came up with a ton of different criteria, and what I came up with, I'm just kind of hunt it right here. Here it is. A ton of different criteria, right? So what I came up with was an order of the most favorite films that there were. Do you want to hear?
You're going to start with the favorite.
Yeah. So
right.
And how they go down. So I compiled all this data just to kind of figure out which movie, all the lists, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, Letterboxd. Oh, and I also found the amount of box office. I just went nuts. I just compiled tons of stuff. So here's how it comes down.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah.
Can I make a guess about the beginning?
Yeah.
So normally I would say that if you really went to like a horror convention, the answer would probably be that the first one was the best. But when I think of most of the people who are doing a lot of online ratings, I feel like there's a slightly younger bias, and I think that they're going to go with number 5 as the best.
Yeah, you're going to like this. So number 1 was the first Final Destination, and it had 48 points. Number 2, Final Destination 5, 47 points.
Yes!
So they basically tied. And I was pretty interested on Letterboxd and on IMDb. Final Destination 5 didn't have the highest scores, because it's the only fresh. It has a 63%. It's the only one of these movies that has a fresh tomato meter rating, which is, I think it deserves. So you have 1 at 48, 5 at 42. Then you have number 2 with 42 points. Then you have, the next one, 3 with 33 points, and 4.
And then the one we don't talk about.
Yeah, 17 points. So it went 48, 47, 42, 33, 17. So it went 1, 5, 2, 3, 4, which is, I'd say, you could flip 5 or 1 either way you want. And I think that's pretty good, right? I
think that 5 had the most fun kills, regardless of budget and the special effects available at the time. And I think number one did the